Today on Everyday Whiskey, we're taking a trip down to Tennessee, and we're going to experience a couple of whiskeys that are near and dear to us that we actually thought deserved their own episode, and it's going to be a real good time, and it's actually going to be quite an informative and historical lesson for you people out there. So it's going to deviate from what we normally do, because we're going to get real technical, real historical, but you're going to love it. Keep watching.
Alright everybody, welcome back to another episode of Everyday Whiskey. I'm Dan.
And I'm Mike.
And this week we're doing, as Mike said in our little preview, we're doing an episode on Tennessee whiskey, or whiskeys that are made in Tennessee.
Yep.
So the one thing that you would associate with Tennessee whiskey is...
Jack Daniels.
Okay, and what is Jack Daniels?
Sour mash.
Okay, so sour mash, that's what we're going to do. Alright, so I'm going to nerd out real quick, because I think to do a good background, I can't just tell you sour mash because it's a very general term.
Yeah, and most people don't know what sour mash is.
So here's the thing. There's a very big stigma attached to Jack Daniels and Jim Beam because on their bottles it says sour mashed bourbon or sour mashed whiskey. So every single distillery sour mashes.
Yep.
It's just you're not legally obligated to actually put it on your bottle. So what sour mashing basically is back in... I might pretend to remember the date right now.
That's
But
fine.
we're going to say
long time ago.
Back in the olden days, this doctor named Dr. James C. Crow realized that with the hot and humid weather in Tennessee and Kentucky that basically after distillation, well actually let me back this up a little bit. There is a bacteria called lactobacillus. So, or lacto for short. It's used in beer primarily now and used in all whiskey, it has to be. So basically, if you add lactobacillus too early into your fermentation, you get a really funky bourbon or whiskey. Yeah. And the alcohol yield is just terrible. So
it's almost non-existent, actually.
It's almost non-existent.
The chemical reaction,
it's unsellable.
Crazy.
But if you add it at the right time, at pretty much right as the yeast starts to expire in the fermentation period, you create all these flavors, you create consistency, and that is what becomes your wash. Which is what becomes your bourbon, or your, or whiskey, however you want to say it. Brown goods. All right, so basically what he found out is that the issue was the sanitization after fermentation. Was that since it's so hot and humid, the lactobacillus after fermentation would run wild through the vats and would basically contaminate everything. But what he figured out is they could use this to their advantage. So they would take the soured yeast from the lactobacillus, ruining it, and they would run it back through again. Okay. And they would basically blend all this together, and this is what became known as sour mashing. So it's literally from bad dead yeast. That's what they're making. That's what they're making of, and everybody does it. Most small batch whiskeys are going to be a sour mash because it creates consistency, creates a similar taste and flavor profile. It's just an easier, more efficient way to make bourbon. Yep. So, now that we're done with the sour mashing montage and...
Told you it was going to be scientific.
Exactly. And if you could say lactobacillus 10 times in a row without stuttering, you're sober.
Sober.
Mike, let's bring in the bottle and we're going to do...
Alright, so today I brought with me, this actually just recently dropped for distribution. It's called Belle Meade.
And I was so excited when you guys, your said company you work for, got
so
this.
my company picked this up because we work closely with... Constellation Brands USA, they are, or actually Constellation Brands International, they are one of the top suppliers of alcoholic beverages in the nation. I mean, they have everything from Corona beer to this beautiful, beautiful bourbon.
And this is there's another channel, they call it the Nerd Spectrum. This is a very nerdy bottle.
Yeah, it's nerdy. But what I really like is the history behind this bottle. So forgive me, I have my iPad out here.
It's a lot of information. I couldn't do it.
It is a lot of information.
Yeah, so.
And luckily, I've been given access to some really cool training seminars and notes that I'm just going to briefly touch on some cool points. But this is, I don't know. We've talked about it before, how much we love history on this channel. And this bottle has awesome history.
So welcome to the history of Belle Meade.
Let me get into it. So, basically, Belle Meade is a product of Nelson's Greenbrier Distillery. Charles Nelson, he was born July 4th, 1835 in northern Germany.
America!
Yeah. He was born in northern Germany. He was the oldest of 6 children, and he was 15 when his father wanted to move to America and, the American dream. Pursue the American dream.
Where was he from
again? Northern Germany.
Okay.
Which is kind of cool.
Got it.
Yeah, I like German.
Usually it's like Irish and Scotch. You see, like
no, this was a German thing.
Okay.
So basically, the family converted all their possessions into gold. And if you know anything about 1835, the only
Swanson.
Yeah. If you know about 1835, the only way to get here was by ship. So they converted all their possessions to gold, and Charles Nelson actually had a special attire made to specifically fit the gold bars and stuff, so that they could transport it over here. It's like this crazy. He was a gold mule.
He's a mule.
He was a gold mule. So anyway, as they're traveling, sure enough, the ship encounters intense storms and it sent a lot of people overboard. Well, guess who went overboard? Charles Nelson. Unfortunately, he went overboard, and due to having all the gold, he sunk like a rock. That's really insincere of me to say, but it's true. I mean, you put a lot of gold bars on you, you jump in the ocean, see how well you do.
As they would call it, his cement waders.
So they literally lost not only their father, actually, he kind of looks like
he looks like Ron Swanson. So we're gonna get a picture of him.
Yeah, I'll try and get
put
this
it
in there without
right here
disclosing what I'm using right now, because I don't know if I can do that. So this entire family, unfortunately, they lost their father and all of their money. That really sucks. So anyway, the rest of the family, they arrive safely in New York. They immigrate through Ellis Island, as everyone did, yada, yada, yada. That's kind of the boring part.
Get to the booze-making part.
We will. So they actually started out in New York by making soap and candles, which is
not booze.
Kind of a unique thing.
Not bourbon.
But not bourbon. No.
Sour mash.
After saving money, they finally moved out to Ohio, and Charles, not the Charles who just passed away, another man in the family named Charles, 17 years old, they entered the butcher business out there in, sorry if that was my phone.
No, that's mine.
They entered the butcher business out in Ohio. Now, you might say, what's that have to do with bourbon? The butcher business, believe it or not, does play into this, as you know, because I told you the story later.
I know the story now.
It's just not their butcher business doesn't directly play into it, but the butcher thing, there's a motif there that you'll find out, and it's really cool. So before the start of the Civil War, they decided to go to Nashville, where they opened a grocery store. So now they went from soap to butcher to now grocery store.
Not the first whiskey we've had on this show that
did
started
a grocery store.
David Nicholas, 1843.
Yeah. So there's a trend there.
There we go.
And a lot of that had to do with, Prohibition coming up and doing stuff behind the scenes and bootlegging basically. So eventually Charles and the family, they realized there was demand for whiskey at this time. So they got into it and they created the Greenbrier handmade sour mash whiskey. This basically, but we'll get to that. So I'm going to skip over a couple things here. Prohibition came, that kind of hurt them. Charles Nelson, he then passed away. Well, actually, he didn't pass away yet. Prohibition didn't come yet. He passed away in 1891. His wife Louisa took over. Then Prohibition came. It was a statewide prohibition in 1909 in Tennessee. So believe it or not,
10 years earlier.
Yeah, there was a prohibition in Tennessee before the actual prohibition, which is kind of cool, and I didn't know that until this. So I don't think a lot of people knew that either. That's not a big
that's like
that was
an
a
oddball thing.
State by state basis back then. So that wasn't.
It's kind of like weed now, where it's a state by state basis. It's the same exact thing.
Anyway, let's fast forward. We get through Prohibition. They, just like all these companies, they survive. They find a way to survive through Prohibition. So now we fast forward to the current day, Andy and Charlie Nelson, who are the descendants of Charles Nelson, and who now currently have started up this project.
Correct me if I'm wrong, had nothing to do with alcohol at all.
No, nothing. And that's why... So remember how I told you, remember the butcher thing? Okay, well, during a certain point in time in their life, this is actually just recently.
They were traveling, right?
They were traveling.
Yeah, they weren't actually. It wasn't like they're in a hometown or anything like that.
I'm trying to see. It's a video, so I can't pull the rest.
Yeah.
It wasn't too long ago. I think it was 2008, 2009.
They haven't. So this distillery has not been around a long time.
No, not at all.
Well, it's been around a long time, but this current distillery has not been around a long time.
No.
These vintages.
So I think it was like 2008. They were going out to a butcher. They had to meet out in in Tennessee, and they're driving along, and they stop at this gas station, and they notice an antique sign, and the antique sign said Nelson Greenbrier Distillery, and they're like, wow, that's really weird, but that's our family name, and they were like shocked. They're like, what the hell? He's like, you're right, that's our name on the sign. So anyway, they go along, they get a couple miles up the road, they go to the butcher shop, they ask the butcher, they're like, hey, what's the deal with Nelson Greenbrier? Like, that's our name, and we just saw it on the sign. And the butcher literally told them, look across the street. sure enough, across the street was the original rick house and the springs that they used to make the original Belle Meade, which was the Greenbrier Distillery Sour Mash whiskey. And before this day, they had no idea that their family.
Since 1853.
That's because
that's when the original one is there.
So they had no idea that their family was making whiskey way back in the late 1800s, early 1900s.
Which is kind of a cool bit of information coming by your family. I would be fucking thrilled.
Right? Like that's crazy. They had this huge legacy behind their name that they didn't even know of. So, sure enough, what they do? They drummed up some of the capital. They started getting in with investors, and they brought the name back. They brought it all the way back until now. And now they make Belle Meade bourbon, which is really good. And another fun fact, the horse on this label is not just a random horse. It is actually all modern-day racehorses, like... what is it?
What was it? Secretariat. Egyptian Pharaoh. And I don't.
Pretty much all modern day racehorses, especially the ones in the Kentucky Derby, can trace their blood lineage back to the horses on this label, which is crazy. Anyway, that does it for the history.
Thank you, Belle Meade.
Yes. Thank you, Belle Meade.
All right, so we can do a quick little review on it.
Yeah, so we'll do a review.
So yeah.
And
I was definitely a big fan of it when I tried it at your house when we were editing a couple weeks ago. Yeah. That's when I first had this, and I was like, "Oh, you gotta get me a bottle. Please get me a bottle. I wanted to locate Belle Meade somehow, and they're always sold out. Every freaking website I go to, they're always sold out. So now New Jersey finally has this
because we picked it up, which is cool.
Sweet. It's a pretty straightforward bourbon. It's 90.4 proof. Yes. Aged 6 to 8 years. So. It's pretty straightforward. You get kind of like that weedy caramel tone on the nose, and then you get this really nice, like kind of bready, like kind of brown sugar note on the taste, and it's just got a really clean, easy finish. It's just a straightforward sour mash bourbon.
It's simple. It's just a simple bourbon, which I think makes it great for neat on the rocks. Actually,
it's versatile.
This is one of few bourbons that I actually really do enjoy putting a little drop of water in, so I'm going to do that.
Which we found out the other week. Alright, so since we're on Tennessee whiskey, and technically this distillery is from West Virginia, but one whiskey they make is from Tennessee. Mm-hmm. So, if you guys aren't familiar with it, it's actually a pretty well-known distillery, but it's also another geeky one.
Yep.
So this is called Smooth Ambler. So this is a West Virginia distillery, but the cool thing about Smooth Ambler's 13-year single barrel is they make it in Tennessee.
Yep.
It's the only thing. I'm not gonna quote me on it. It might be the only thing, but it's the only thing on the website. I found it. That list they make it in Tennessee. But it's a 13-year single barrel. It's like I said, we tried this the other week. It's
so good.
It's so good. It's freaking. We're gonna try it right now, but it's the nose. You get creamy vanilla and brown sugar.
Yes,
on
exactly.
The palate, on the palate. It's straight up toffee and butterscotch, almost like kind of like scotchy-esque butterscotch.
And it changed. This is a bourbon
that
changes as you just let it sit like this.
And I'm trying to remember if this was a store pick. I don't believe this was a store pick. No, this wasn't a store pick because a lot of the Old Scout. So it's called Smooth Ambler Old Scout. Smooth Ambler Old Scout is they do a lot of store picks. But they also make, so this is not available. You can't ever get this again. No. This is kind of mean to show this on the show, but get over it.
This is available, and the price point you'll find it should be usually between $40, $50, depending on what store wants to mark it up what. And there actually are a few other variants of this. However, they have not landed for distribution, so I'm not going to go into depth about those yet because I don't want people to get their hopes up. Like, I want to try that one, and it's not available yet. But I will update that as we learn more.
But for Smooth Ambler, what you can always get is their Contradiction Rye. This is actually made in West Virginia, not Tennessee, unfortunately, but this is always available. It's a right now, they used to do 100 proof. We have the 100 proof here. They do a 92 proof rye, really solid product, a little bit of water, pretty decent little rye. If you're a rye whiskey, it's definitely a go-to. It's a go-to of mine. But yeah, I'm going to have some of this 13-year single barrel here.
So good.
But
two completely different.
The one thing I liked about this, though, is the mash bill for this single barrel. It's 84% corn. So
that's why it's so sweet.
Yeah, it's 84% corn, 8% rye, and 8% malted barley. Damn. So it's like that's all the sweetness, that's all the butterscotch, and then the rye just gives it like this nice little basically nice little texture, nice little it rounds it off good on the back end of the palate.
And you could tell that it's
well
predominantly corn because it's.
I can't actually say where I got this either, so
no, you can't.
It's not happening. But if you see it, pick it up.
I don't want to say it tastes like corn, but you'll notice there's a lot of the sweetness.
It's 84% corn.
It's there, and that mash bill that makes a huge difference. A lot of people might think that you can't taste this stuff in bourbon, but I'm telling you, when you have enough bottles of enough different mash bills, you start to pick these nuances out in it, and you can tell that this is corn. And it's good.
So it's a cool mash bill too, because it's very rare for them to be that high up. And the Bell Mead is awesome for like an everyday so. Out of all this, so Bell Mead's gonna be your everyday sipper, and this is gonna be your once in a while I need to blow off some steam, because it's up there. It's 51.3%. It's 100 proof whiskey. Like I said, super solid product by Smooth Ambler. I've always been a fan of them, so definitely want to get this on the show.
Definitely your everyday. I mean, it's great. It's your everyday.
I'm waiting for the cognac. I'm waiting for the cognac cask to come.
Yes, they're going to be having. They have a cognac.
I'm waiting for the cognac cask.
Do we have the other ones? Styles or products? Let me see if I can bring those up. Because you know what? I'll tell you about them. I won't tell you about them, but I'll tell you which ones that they have. They have the Reserve, which we actually can get in Jersey. However, the Reserve is very, very, very allocated. Very rare. This one, there's much more of easily available. You could find that anywhere. So there's the original, the Reserve, which is just cask strength. Basically, that's the only difference. It's going to be higher proof.
That's the basics.
And then there's Sherry, Madeira, and XO casks.
Which is the cognac.
Yeah, there's the cognac cask.
Sherry is the one that's really hard to
Madeira's Madeira cask, and Sherry cask. So that's pretty standard. A lot of bourbons do Sherry. Sherry, Port, Madeira, those are some pretty common casks that bourbons are aged in, as well as cognac. So I won't go into detail. I don't know, because again, you can't find them where we're at. So I don't want to.
We'll go down a conversation rabbit hole that is not going to be worth the next 20 minutes. But so basically, that kind of sums up what we want.